Hello, hello, and welcome to
Yo, what's up?
episode 85 of Titanforge podcast. I'm Dranos, joined by Tettles. Hello.
Yo, we're back.
Yo.
Just us this weekend.
Yeah,
Back on a Saturday.
yeah, back on our usual Saturdays. Regrettably, Trell this weekend is he's driving somewhere doing something, so unable to do show this week. But not to worry, he'll be back, of course, next week. If all things go as planned. This week, we are going to talk about Shadowlands systems, because now that we're several months into the patch, we figured it'd be good to go back and talk about all the different systems that have launched this expansion, and the changes that have been made to them over that time as
Mhm.
well, and talk about where we think there have been successes, where we think there have been failures, and what we'd like to see with those systems going forward, and maybe make some comparisons back to previous systems and predictions for how things will develop into these coming patches. Because, of course, it's still very early in the expansion, right? 905.
Yeah,
I mean, compared to the point we were in both Legion and BFA, things looked so different by the end of those expansions that there's a good chance that there will be a lot of stuff that's different compared to now as well by the time we get to the end of Shadowlands.
exactly. And I think also part of that is we haven't talked really too terribly much about the systems since launch. I know we did a lot of projections on them prior to the expansion coming out, but I don't think we've done anything concrete since the expansion has launched.
Yeah, I mean we talk about some of these from time to time. We certainly, like the Covenant system comes up quite a bit, but we're going to talk about like not just the Covenant system, but the Conduit system, the Soulbind system, legendaries, loot.
It's always offhanded stuff too, though.
Yeah,
Right?
we haven't really done like a kind of whole episode focused on them, just looking at them for the entire topic. It's usually like in the context of something else that we talk about how one of these systems plays in. But we figured this would be a
Yeah.
good time as well because we've got the Valor Points in too, and there's been a lot of like implementation concerns that people have about Valor Points, and I think I agree with several of them as well. I think the Valor Point system, uh, there's definitely a lot to talk about around it, and a
Yeah.
lot of these systems, I don't know. It feels like a an expansion where there's been a lot of overdeveloped systems to me, where there's
Ooh,
like
are you using the word overdeveloped in like the sense of tedious, not fun?
yeah,
What do you mean by overdeveloped?
and there's just a little bit too much brake and not enough gas in a lot of these engines.
I understand what you're saying. Yes.
Yeah, like they were a little bit more worried with these systems about it turning into like a I don't know. At least to me, it seems like the fear was really Warlords of Draenor type situation where like if you create a system that's too easy and that people can be done with in a month, then everybody's gonna unsub until the next content patch. And so there's a lot of stuff where it's like, all right, well, how do we make sure they can't just be done with it in a month? Um,
Hmm.
but I don't know. I mean, that's kind of my broader take on it. I do think that a lot of the systems there's been a lot of good upgrades to over just the
As a
last couple
whole.
months. Yeah, like I mean the consistent trend has been towards good changes for each of these, and it's tough because we're kind of comparing the situation we're in now to the end of BFA, right? And BFA was compared to the end of Legion, but in many ways, those expansions got a lot of the changes that made them better came in the later
Yeah.
patches.
I will say that Shadowlands does feel a lot more complete, at least towards the beginning. And while things aren't perfect, talk about that I'm sure soon. Things aren't perfect, but at the same time, I do think that things do feel at least a little bit more complete.
Yeah, especially with the changes we've seen recently, I think it's pretty fair to say that like 9.0 is better than 8.0 was, and better than 7.0 was probably, except for how novel
I,
like
I,
M plus was at the time.
I think 9.0 is better than like even 8.2.
I don't know. I mean,
When Essences first came out,
yeah, 8.2 had problems with the essence system, but a lot of people liked 8.2 better than 8.3 because 8.3 had corruption, and that was a
it was
system that
all
people did not
it
like.
was all really fried. I remember it was all pretty. What the
Yeah,
fuck?
people were not happy about BFA the whole way through, of course. Um, but yeah, I mean, like Legion didn't really fix legendaries until 7.2. They were legendaries were in a pretty rough spot in
Yeah.
7.0 and 7.1.
and weapons and artifact knowledge and all that shit was bad. And interestingly enough, I don't think we have a system that is like straight up just ruining the game currently,
which I think that you can
which
make
does come
arguments.
back to the gas brakes analogy, where it's not enough gas on some of the stuff, but at least it's not fucking awful.
Right, there's enough breaks in all these systems that like it's none of them are.
According to chat, there's the maw is ruining the game though.
I don't know. I mean, the nice thing about the parts of the bat, like the maw and the stuff, I don't know, is you just don't have to go there, right? Like maw Torghast, you go to the maw once a week, and you go to Torghast 0 times a week, or like also once per couple weeks or whatever, and you'll be totally fine. Assuming that your character, like once you've done a month or so of actually like doing them, but
yeah,
I mean, I'm with you that the maw and Torghast both have a lot of unrealized potential.
There's room for improvement, yeah. All right, I'm not sure if they can improve on actually,
but we'll cover that when we get to our main topic. Before we get there, we've got a couple of small little things to talk about. One cool thing that a player called Emalson made is this stats site. I think we may have shown it on the show before, but there's been some upgrades to it, so I figured it would be worth taking a look at. It's pretty cool. You can just plonk your guild in. You have to click this search button on it, and it's you then paste in like a Warcraft logs link or a Raider.io link, but it'll give you your guild. Some of the things are a little buggy, like the raid time calculator. It's a little weird.
Hold on, how much did it say you? How much did you say?
Well, it says we raid 3 times on Tuesday, 3 times on Wednesday, twice on Thursday, once on Saturday, once on Sunday, and once on Monday. So we're raiding 11 days a week or something, but also only 12 hours a week.
That is Pop Tart Corn Dogs raid time.
Yeah, that's we bend the laws of time to make raid happen.
Mine is actually correct, except it says that we start raiding 15 minutes earlier than we do on Sundays, which maybe we pull early or something on Sundays.
Interesting. Yeah.
How much time did you guys have on Stone Legion?
31.1 hours of prog time on Stone Legion.
We were at 26.2.
Yeah, it's a really cool site though, because it gives you your progression overview for each boss, including like what week you killed everything on, how many pulls it took you, what the total progression time was, raid item level analysis, which can be useful for just to kind of remind yourself what level you were at when you were killing these bosses. And it has these graphs as well, so like you look at this is my guild sire progression. It'll give you your pull count and your progression time. These will come with a percentile, although it's a little bit, I wouldn't read too much into those for most guilds, because you're graded on a curve with every other guild, and this time changes dramatically as you go later into the patch, right? Like you expect every boss, these all change quite a bit, especially if you're pulling post-nerf bosses or pre-nerf bosses or whatever.
Oh yeah, our Stone Legion is 32nd percentile.
Yeah, ours is an 11th or 17th percentile on pull count and an 11th percentile on progression time. Dude,
yeah,
you get these beautiful graphs as well. Like here, this is boss HP plotted against pull number, so you can see like this nice, beautiful, slow downwards trend on Sire, and then you can see Wednesday, like we just have this boss dead to rights this entire time. Look at all these great low pulls, and then look at Stone Legion generals. Just look at the graphs on this monster. Just these flat lines. And they're just nothing sub 50% until the second to last day, and then on the last day, just bang, like it just dies out of nowhere out in a field of high pulls. What a horrific boss!
Get this website into dark mode. Like, how did you do that?
I don't know, man.
Mine is literally just white.
Yeah, I guess it just came that way. I don't know.
Huh? All right.
I might have a dark mode extension, but I don't think I do. But maybe I do.
I think you may.
But yeah, this is a cool website. So anybody wants to check it out, you should. I'll have a link to it in the description of the show notes, and I assume Tuttles pasted it in chat or whatever.
Yeah, I just put it in chat. But yeah, like on the homepage, it's a nice holistic view of all the guilds basically, and how they, or I guess not on the homepage, but like on the
tier stats.
The tier stats page. Yeah. The tier stats page is one of the cooler functions too, and it shows like the curves of how guilds were killing like Stone Legion generals. and
Yes, you can
other
see
bosses.
Stone Legion Generals has 50 more pulls on average than Sire, and takes an extra 4 hours
What the fuck
of
is that?
prog
What
time.
is that? What is that hot fix that was on Sire?
Uh, I'm
Was
not
it? Is it
sure.
to the? Is it to the fucking puddles?
Oh, maybe, yeah, maybe they're talking about the swirlies showing up.
Shit! What a unimpactful hotfix. I was like, what is that?
Yeah, you can see a
So,
big spike in Stone Legion kills as well after the second hotfix to it, and the first, I
oh,
guess.
dude, Artificer.
There's Artificer.
Artificer.
Okay.
Artificer is one of those bosses that like guilds that are still progressing on Artificer are probably going to have like a lot harder of a time on Artificer than the guilds that previously have progged on it, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's
So
fair.
I think that curve makes sense relative to like most of the other ones, which are at least kind of linear. Right now, everything's starting to like kind of taper off, right? Where guilds are like really starting to struggle. Huntsman Altamore.
Well, so yeah, all these early bosses just they have that kind of curve because there's just not that many mythic guilds that haven't killed them yet, right? Like if you're mythic raiding guild, you're just gonna have they're most of the guilds have already gotten through
Yeah,
these earlier bosses, but then these later bosses you still have that kind of upward slope because these are still getting towards the middle of the pack of mythic raiding guilds.
sure.
So I think that makes
We need
sense.
a we need a champion of the light back.
Yeah, champs would have just been instantly every single guild in the world killed it. No new kills
Just
after week one.
blast straight through. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, it's a cool site. It's nice way of visualizing stuff. Um,
It's a
so
cool site. Yeah.
very cool. In other news, we have a friend of the show, Squishy, has identified a bug, and every time I say those words, everybody's just crossing their fingers, like not my spec, not my spec, not my spec, not my spec, because it's
Probably
never
your
good.
spec.
It's never good to learn about a bug for your spec, right? Either it's something that makes your spec worse, in which case that's you're like, well, like okay, I guess it's good to learn about those bugs so that you know what's going on and maybe you can get Blizz to fix it, or it's something that makes your spec better, right? And then you're like, oh no, here is a nerf bat now lingering over my head whenever Blizzard decides to fix this thing. So the bad
Yes.
news is it is for Vengeance Demon Hunters. So if you're a Vengeance Demon Hunter out there, it is a bug in your favor, which means it's something that is very likely, I would say, to get fixed given Vengeance Demon Hunter's position in the metagame.
Yes.
What is the bug? Magic damage, which, we talk about how Vengeance Demon Hunter's immune to magic damage. Turns out they're not supposed to be as immune as they are. Turns out that Demonic Wards is being applied twice, is what the math looks like from Squishy's end here. So he's getting a 36% DR when he should be getting somewhere in the 23% range. So that's you can look at the Wowhead post if you want to see all the math and stuff. But TLDR, if they fixed it, Vengeance Demon Hunters would on average be taking about 20% more magic damage than they currently do, which would still make them the best tank against magic damage by default.
Yes.
They would be taking, they'd have like a 20% base DR against it instead of a 15% like most tanks. So it's not, it wouldn't, make them die to magic damage in a way that, paladins and warriors don't already or anything, but it would represent a sizable increase in the magic damage they do take. So
it's also important to note that it will be like a 22% nerf to their magic mitigation, but it's not like they're not going to be. It's only a 20% nerf to their magic mitigation. It's not like a 20%.
So
it's not being cut from 35% mitigation to 10.
Let's clarify here. Yeah, it's not, and it's not clear they will fix this. This is just Squishy saying if they were to fix it, right? If they were to fix it, what would it do? And the answer is, yeah, you would, like, if you were taking 100 damage now, you would take 121 tomorrow. It's not like your mitigation is going. Yeah, I mean, anytime you see percentages in these kind of areas, you gotta kind of understand exactly what they mean. Because it's not like the mitigation numbers would be reduced by 15 percentage points, right? Down from like
exactly
37 to 20, 24 or whatever.
Now was memeing on Twitter about how Prot Warrior's rising. He was already saying that he thought Prot Warrior was pretty sick, and Prot Warrior pretty much immune to physical damage right now.
Yeah, that is the case. Prot Warrior has been and always will be immune to physical damage while they can block, and their ability to block has gone up this patch. It goes up every time they get some gear as well. And yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting place to be. I think Prot Warrior is a likely candidate for good future spec. to be on. But my guess is if this were to be a bug they fixed for Vengeance, it would not be a spec killing bug. So don't worry too much of your Vengeance Demon Hunter, but do note that is something that I think is pretty likely to get fixed now that it's been revealed.
Yeah, I think that the likelihood of it getting fixed seems pretty high right now.
Yeah. All right, let us move on to our Tip of the Week segment, where I have forgotten to prepare a Tip of the Week. So let's start with Tattles' Clip of the Week while I madly try and think of a tip during the duration of this clip. So,
dude, this clip is very funny.
All right, what are we looking at here?
You can actually turn on audio for it.
Okay.
They're doing Stone Legion General's progression.
All right, I will. I'll play the audio. Let's see.
The audio kind of speaks for itself.
Yeah.
Switch to you.
The puppy. Help.
Yeah. Yes. No, that's basic.
Did this Doomguard get crystallized? What the
Yeah,
fuck?
what the hell?
Hello?
So they cast Crystallize on the Doomguard.
Yeah, okay, so most people don't play Doomguard. Like, more often than not, you have like a different pet out, right? But for some reason, these nerds summoned their Ritual of Doom to get the Doomguard out for the Warlock. That pet got targeted with the Crystallize.
Yeah, because they don't usually play Doomguard right, because it doesn't trigger the legendary they usually run.
Exactly.
And it's also on this like hour-long cooldown to summon, so even if you were running it, you'd only have like one out.
I don't know why that person isn't. The better question is, why does that person have a Doomguard out?
Well, maybe they're not running that legendary, right? Then I think it is a damage upgrade. That is really funny though that can get targeted by Crystallize. That boss, it's not buggy on every pull anymore like it used to be, but it does still have some nice bugs. It's
We've had it spell queue into some bad shit going into the intermission. You're like, oh my fucking god, what is this spell queuing?
My favorite part is just like some spells get canceled and some don't when you push into or out of intermissions. It's always fun. And also just General Draven can get stuck in the wall or he can crit. And either of those things are just like catastrophes.
Depending on when you push with the Wicked Blade like being cast, it can like queue up the Crystallize immediately or not and shit like that. And you're like, oh, the Crystallize is now. You're like, oh no.
It's a great fight that I do love so much. So much, as you could tell from the graphs of my guild's progression. The sick part is that it would look like that every single time we re-killed the boss as well. Just that same like 100% wipe, 75% wipe, 100% wipe, 100% wipe, dead.
Mm-hmm.
All right. My tip of the week is nope. None are coming to me.
Don't play Doomguard on that's Stone Legion Generals.
Okay, yeah. My tip of the week is don't play Doomguard on Stone Legion Generals because it might get targeted by Crystallize. So we gotta watch out for that. Although honestly, I mean that's actually not bad, right? Like a lot of times on Stone Legion Generals, you in the intermissions in particular, you want your Crystallizes to be gripped, right? To be not done. Sure. So if there's if there's just a pet in there, because the Doomguard's not going to take damage from it, then you save yourself a life grip.
You gotta move the pet, man. If can you imagine like during the actual phase, whenever the winds are going off, the pet's in the back of the room just fucking.
Oh yeah, that would be so funny. The Crystallize just goes on it when nobody's near. Yeah,
that's not good.
Yeah, actually, given that's a bug that exists, that clip was such a best case scenario for how it could have played out.
Yes.
Like that, you could so easily construct a way where that wiped you. All right, let us move on to our main topic, where we will discuss the Shadowlands systems. All of them that we could think of, talk about how they have played out. So we'll start off with the Covenant system, because I think that's the big one. Although it is also the one that we've talked about the most before, and I think where our positions are probably most well known. So we'll try not to spend too long on it. But Covenant system obviously is introduced this expansion. You pick one of your 4 covenants, and it brings with it your active ability, your 3 different soulbind trees, 1 conduit that enhances your covenant, and not too much else, right? It's just those. I guess it's 2 active abilities.
It's the signature ability and the class ability.
My
Yeah.
favorite part about this, there's that trinket that reduces the cooldown of your Covenant signature ability by 25% or whatever. And every single person I know reads that and they're like, oh, like
That's
Convoke,
sick.
right?
Yeah,
But it's actually,
yeah.
it's not Convoke, it's Soul Shape, right?
It's fucking garbage.
And for Kyrian, it's not even your file cooldown, it's your Summon Steward cooldown.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So you can activate more Goliaths and
So that trinket is just it is so cursed. But the only you're just trying to pawn it off on somebody who's read it wrong, which is everybody. Everybody assumes that trinket does
everybody's
the
read
other
it
thing.
wrong.
Yeah. So that's completely that part's wild to me. Other than that, I feel like the Covenant abilities have landed in pretty good places. I think that most of them are pretty fun buttons to press.
Okay. I have a question. So whenever Covenants were introduced, Ian related them to like racials in terms of impactfulness, and in terms of like whether or not your spec is viable. It should be like very similar to racials, whether or not it is viable. Do you think they ended up hitting that mark?
I don't think we see the level of diversity between Covenants that we do between like races.
Okay.
Right. Like I don't know what the number is of people who play suboptimal races, but I imagine it's pretty high. Because even in my raid, we got a lot of people doing that. We don't
play
have anybody.
suboptimal race.
Yeah,
I play suboptimal race. Like
I've done it too, right?
Like
I'll change my race for a fight if I need to, right? Like if there's some reason to on a certain fight, if it's going to be a really close boss fight. But if we look at like the statistics, so like here's the Castle Nathria subcreation one, and I don't know what's a random spec to look at. I don't know.
Fire Mage.
Fire Mage, okay.
I mean, but Fire Mage is like Fire Mage and Boomkin are like so polarizing that those are hard to like actually look at. What is one that's like less polarizing?
Fire Mage over the top 1,000 Fire Mage parses they could find in Castle Nathria, 100% of them are playing Fae.
What about like Rogue?
Okay, yeah, Rogue should be fairly close. So we could look at like Outlaw first. So Outlaw,
because at least Rogue should be close. At least it should.
And so this is Mythic Castle Nathria again as well. We've got 46% Necrolord, 24% Kyrian, 23% Fae, 5% Venthyr. So that, I mean, I think that this is a
46% Necrolord, really?
I would describe this as a huge success. I mean, 46% for the top one is like, I mean, that's really impressive. An impressively close amount.
I'm surprised it's Necrolord.
Yeah, Necrolord. You have the Ameni. Actually, and there's a new build around it as well.
I guess people swap to it.
But it's also, I mean, yeah, and this is for Outlaw. We could take a look at some of the other specs as well and see if that holds. So like Subtlety. Subtlety is 60% Fae, 20% Kyrian, 15% Venthyr, and 4% Necrolord.
I would still describe this as a success. What about like?
And what about Sin? Hang on. So Sin is 80% Venthyr, 13% Fae, 6% Necrolord, and 1% Kyrian. So one thing that jumps out to me about all those numbers, right, is that each of the three different rogue specs has a covenant that's at like 50% or above among Mythic Castle Nathria parses, which means that it's just like not. There's really not a lot of people playing multiple specs of rogue in raid this patch, right? Like there just can't be, right? Because there's 70% of the assassination rogue parses are Venthyr, and only like 5% of the outlaw rogue parses were, right? So there's only a certain number of those people that can be doing both of those things.
Or it means that their people are swapping, which is what's actually happening.
Maybe, but I mean, you can't swap between things like week to week feasibly. And yeah, I mean, it's not like
rogues for our guild started off as Night Fae, right? They started, or actually, they even started off as Kyrian. They started off as Kyrian playing sub, and then eventually they swapped to Night Fae playing Outlaw, and now they're playing Assassination as Venthyr.
Right, but it's not like it's not like somebody's like, hey, for this boss I want to play Outlaw. And so I'm going to play, Outlaw for this boss, then I'm going to play Assassination for this boss. Like, that's basically not a phenomenon that people are doing this patch and this expansion, which to me is a great shame, because to me that was one of my favorite parts about playing a DPS spec that had 3 specs, or a DPS class that had 3 specs. For instance, like an Uldir. Here's my logs from Uldir. No big deal here. Where I'm playing like outlaw on a lot of these earlier bosses, and like obviously subtlety for Zool, assassination for these last two, and like this is a lot of fun for me. And it's not, even though my best parses were on different specs for these, I played every single boss as every different spec on different weeks, and most weeks I was swapping between all three of these for different bosses just based on what I wanted to play on each boss that week.
Yeah, pures are in a really weird spot.
Yeah, so, well, you're either the Fire Mage, right, where you are just required to play Fae and you can't touch anything else if you want to Mythic Raid on it, right? Or you're the Outlaw, you're the Rogue, where it's like, okay, in previous expansions you could multi-spec, right? But this expansion you have to just declare your spec.
I feel like rogues.
Lock it
I
in.
feel like rogues are in the worst spot because I don't know what it is about rogue players, but they all want to play all three fucking specs. They want to play literally rogue players want to play all three specs at different times, and I don't know why, but yeah, that's definitely a rogue thing because there are a lot of mages that are just fire one tricks, right? There are a lot of warlocks that are just normally Destro one tricks, not really AF one tricks. I think if you're playing AF, you're probably also a Destro player, but like.
I think AF one tricks are more common than Destro one tricks. It's just like Nyalotha that kind of tilted our perceptions of that, but AF was the go-to spec since like 7.0.
Okay, fair.
But yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? Because when we're talking about this covenant system, right, and we look at these percentages, right? Like, say we look back at the outlaw rogue percentages between the different covenants, right? It's like this. I mean, this is such a great show of balance between the covenants, right? But
whenever you actually get down to it, like the actual numbers between like all of the classes, then you're just like, what the fuck?
Well, but here's the thing, right? Is when you have a spec or a class, a spec that has these numbers, it's actually, you have a lot less choice when you're playing that than if you're playing the 100%, right? If you're playing Fire Mage and you have the 100% Fae thing, right? Like
that's a good one.
You would
that's
actually,
a really good one.
You would rather be I would rather be playing a class where all three of my specs were 100% of the same covenant. And at least for Mage, right? Fae works for both Arcane and Fire, right? And so you actually get to play two specs on Mage. With Rogue, like there's a couple of those covenants that are above 10% for multiple specs, but there's really not that many, right? Like all four of the covenants except for Venthyr are pretty close for Outlaw. But for the other two specs, there's a clear winner, and for one of them, it is that Venthyr, which is not very high up for Outlaw. And so it's just a case of like, yeah, okay, you could play a worse combo, but it feels impactful enough that you really notice it, right? Like if you were trying to play something that is suboptimal for Mage, none of the top 1,000 Mage parses, Fire Mage parses have been able to do it without Fae.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's weird because the system is being pulled in these two different directions, where on the one hand you want all the covenants to be represented, but on the other hand it is much more fun for any individual player if there's not close covenants, because if you don't
feel like it's suboptimal,
then you're at least like, if you have the same covenant that's good for everything and it's clearly good for everything, you aren't put in this position where the inability to swap actually hurts you.
Okay, so what would you say are the successes of covenants?
Well, I think that a lot of the abilities are pretty fun. I think that also the covenants have been balanced in such a way that it's not the end of the world usually to be the wrong one.
Sure.
I don't know. I mean, it kind of is for a lot of specs, but
I don't think it actually is. I think that's perceived value. I think there's some specs that are fucking bad without it though.
Like, I mean, like Fire Mage, right?
Fire Mage and Moonkin are like, what the fuck?
Yeah, what percentage of Moonkin these days are playing
not Night Fae? I don't know.
Let's take a look.
In raid specifically,
99.5% Fae, which is impressive as well. This means everybody swapped, given that Tettles famously baited everybody into playing Kiri in week 1 of the expansion.
All right. Anyways, negatives of the system. I think that
I think it does well if you are somebody who does want to like you want to play one, you feel good about playing one covenant, and then a couple months later you want to play a different one and you swap, and it's like a one-time swap, and then you're playing something else and you're playing something different. I think that works. I think that the system works well for that sort of player. But I do think for the player that wants to be optimal, the system creates, when it's doing its job right and the covenants are close, those sorts of players are in like 80% of content or 75% of content are going to feel bad, and do feel bad.
I think that also another negative is like it really does feel like it locks you in a lot of the time to where you're not super able to swap. But yet, I think that they missed the mark on like they want you to feel like a Night Fae Moonkin. They want you to feel like a Night Fae Mage. They want you to feel like a Venthyr Rogue, and you don't feel like a fucking Venthyr Rogue. You don't feel like a
I'm
you
sure
feel
some
like
people do, but yeah,
I feel like they missed the mark. I personally feel like they missed the mark. Maybe I'm in a minority of that. Do you feel like a Kyrian Vengeance Demon Hunter?
I mean, it's interesting, right? Because like with like when every fire mage plays Fae, do they all feel like Night Fae fire mages? Right? Is that a part of their identity, or is it just like I am fire, therefore I am Fae, right? And it's not like I have chosen to be a Fae fire mage, right? Where I could have chosen to be a Venthyr fire mage or a Necrolord fire mage. Like
there's an illusion of choice.
Those just don't exist. Yeah,
it feels like there's an illusion of choice, and there's no like actual choice.
Yeah, and then there are some specs where it's like, okay, there are actually a couple options, right? Like Outlaw Rogue.
Yeah.
You do get to make that choice. But I feel like some people probably do get quite a bit out of that. For me though,
Sure.
in that position, it's paralyzing. It's a paralyzing system that the fact that I'm never going to be able to actually do both in the same week is a huge
I
disincentive
hate
to
that.
playing. Yeah, it's like in every previous patch, you were kind of aspiring to end up being this like tournament realm character that can do whatever you want to do. And this expansion, the existence really of the Covenant system, prevents you from ever getting above like a certain amount of options for your character. Right? You can never in the previous expansions, like you could work on your outlaw set, and then you could work on your assassination set, then you could work on your subtlety set, and then you'd have all three. But you never get to have all four of the covenants, right? You're never like some people are currently working on getting all four covenants up to renown 40, but it's just so that they'll have the option to swap faster in the next patch, which is also a degenerate gameplay pattern that should not exist.
Yeah, I'm not super big fan.
Although
of that.
I don't think it's
Okay.
that big deal because I don't think that really reaches that far down.
So do you think they should pull the ripcord? I guess this is like a ancient like circling back.
Yeah.
Do you think that they should allow you free swapping?
I mean, yes, I still think they should do that. I don't think that things have changed much though for them.
Okay.
I don't expect that they will. But I do think that if they did that tomorrow, it would be a dramatically better expansion.
Okay. Covenant specific buffs and dungeons. I think that honestly the Covenant specific buffs and dungeons would be a lot better if you actively had choices between the dungeons that you were doing. Because like I don't love the buffs in the dungeons just like as a design. I think that as a design principle, those buffs are not good. Like I would rather have the dungeon be like a thing and like have that gimmicky mini game not be present. But if they are dead set on it being present, I do really wish I could swap covenants between dungeons so I actively have a choice versus, hey, healer boy, you're gonna have to swap permanently to Venthyr because it's less bad for you than it is the rest of us.
Yeah, so that's how those played out, right? Is you would just like any serious comp would just require the
One person
healer.
be every covenant. Yeah.
Yeah, it's because your tank's a Kyrian probably, and your mage is a Fae. You always have enough Fae.
You make the fucking rogue play Necrolord, even though like
yes.
Necrolord is like not great, but Necrolord's not bad for rogue because all the rogue covenants are like so close. The rogue is like, it's funny. If you have a rogue in your group, the rogue is the most flexible piece.
Yeah, because they don't care because none of the covenant abilities do any damage anyway. So they're just happy to be like, oh yeah, dude, if I get Necrolord, you're just gonna invite me all week. Poggers.
Have you seen the change to the Plaguefall one?
Where you just walk near them and
it's actually not bad.
Yeah, I mean the playing Necrolord, to their credit, they've given a pretty big buff to Necrolord, which was the by far the least popular covenant across the board. The thing is, I don't know if it opens it up for any specs that it wasn't open for before.
No, it does not.
The change to Plaguefall and the change to how the shield works. But interestingly, I think that the reworking of the warrior ability did open that up. The reworking of the of that, so I think that
Prot Warrior actually can play it. Yeah,
but it's not because
Vengeance.
they changed the shield or the Plaguefall. It's just because they changed the ability.
Vengeance actively can play it too, but I think that like Yeah, basically every other dungeon you'd rather have the Kyrian file anyways.
Right. Vengeance, you would only play it because you wanted the Necrolord buff in those dungeons. And so you can
Yeah.
only really do that on Tournament Realm, where they do that. On Tournament Realm, you do get to play the different covenants between the different dungeons, which
And that's cool
yeah, that is
because
the
it's an active decision.
like that's my favorite part about MDI actually is the cool covenant swaps and plays that they're making between each dungeon.
Yeah.
That's the world I would like to live in. All right, let's talk about conduits and soulbinds because this is another system that is very heavily tied to the to the covenant system. So of course the soulbinds, we've got these 3 different soulbind trees for each covenant. How many of your different soulbind trees have you used, Tettles?
I've used all 3 of them,
Okay.
but like, realistically, I only ever really use one. Like I use Karain, whatever I'm tanking. I use Dreamweaver whenever. Actually, I don't really use Dreamweaver ever anymore, but I use Dreamweaver whenever I'm healing sometimes, but like not really.
It was good like early prog, right?
Exactly. Dreamweaver
yeah.
was really good early prog whenever double potency and shit like that. So it was good situationally in PvP for a little bit too, so I used it some. And then Naya, pretty much the default for balance though.
Yeah, it's interesting because like for Kyrian, there are some cases where like Klaya is interesting and powerful now that we're full tree and you get down to the bottom row where you get 5% crit. But I think Pelagos is pretty overwhelmingly the soulbind of choice for this spec. I guess we have soulbind data also on this subcreation page, the Castle Nathria subcreation stats. It's like Moonkin and Raid are playing. They're playing Naya 97.5% of the time.
I'm not surprised it's not 100.
2% Korain, and of course the Kyrian player is playing Pelagos.
Oh yeah, okay. So that's 2% of people who forgot to swap off a Karain, and then somebody's playing Kyrian.
For Fire, it's 99.1% Korain, 0.8% Naya, 0.1% Dreamweaver. Good chances if you look at the max DPS, these other 2 soulbinds are way lower. There's a good chance these are like less geared people or maybe less renowned people who don't have the like who aren't full build on Karain yet.
Yeah,
maybe
Karain is actually so fucking troll to try to get your the crit buff onto targets. I don't know if you've played it at all.
I haven't. No,
but
I've done Midnight Fae.
If you mess up and get the crit buff on the wrong thing too, it's really really troll.
Outlaw is pretty good diversity here. So the top 2 soulbinds for Outlaw are 2 different Necrolord ones, and then we've got a Fae one, Pelagos.
Aramir and a Mini are probably the 2 closest soulbinds, like period.
Yeah. And I mean, they're split pretty close to 50-50 on that. And then, of course, old Plague Deviser Marilith right down to the bottom. There's a couple of the soulbind trees that are
so bad.
A couple of soulbind trees. I think Forge Light Mika Nico is also pretty low down for most specs. I don't know. Have you done any keys with somebody who's just summoned Brawn and trolled your entire pull?
I've had Braun knock a bomb into another trash pack, and you're like, "What the? Get the fucking thing off right now! Get that shit off right this second." It was like the first time somebody ever summoned Braun. I'm like, "What the fuck does that do?" He goes, "Dude, it does good damage." And then we looked after the key. It's like 0.2% of his overall DPS. And honestly, it knocked a mob into another trash pack. I'm like, take that shit off right this second. You literally cannot wear that.
Yeah, that one's not good. That one's a little bit of a troll. I don't know. I think the soulbinds. I think most covenants do have like. I think Necrolord's pretty big success, right? 2 very good ones that you can choose depending on the situation. There and there's compelling arguments to play both. There's builds around both of them. So I think the Necrolord soulbinds, two usable ones, pretty good. Kyrian, like 1.5. Night Fae, there's like 3 good ones, but most specs only use 1 for any given situation, right? It's mostly like the others had utility at different times, but most specs have now settled into their 1. Venthyr also. I guess for tank Venthyr players, which is not very many people, there's actually quite a few interesting choices there. Like Prop Pally, which is overwhelmingly playing Venthyr and Raid, you actually do see all 3 soulbinds used. Pretty well, above 10% here, which is pretty good. And there's definitely compelling stuff for each of them. So I think Venthyr also there's some good success for tanks in particular where General Draven has a lot of value. For most specs though, it's not Nagia that just owns too hard to really consider the other options. So
yeah, I mean there are soulbind. I think that there are soulbinds that are just like straight outliers. I actually think it's kind of funny that Night Fae has the most flexibility from like spec to spec, class to class, soulbind wise, because like a lot of basically if you're Necrolord, you're playing probably Aramir.
well,
Like
I mean, or many, both are.
I mean, he's like not bad, but like Aramir is definitely more personal DPS. Is the thing, right?
Many is what you play when you're just like, all right, I understand my place in this group. I am the rogue. Here's a button that increases the fire mage's damage. Like, I get it. I'll do it.
But the DKs are all playing Aramir.
Yeah. Well, because DKs get to do damage. DKs, they're not quite fire mages. Like, other people don't give them damage at the cost of their own quality of life quite so much, although they do to some extent. But they're not like that rogue or healer or tank tier where it's like, okay, I'm sacrificing my whole kit to make you do more damage. I get it.
Yeah.
Which is
I don't know. I mean, conduits and soulbinds. Okay, I guess we just talked about soulbinds a lot, but it's also partially to do with conduits. It's like a lot of the same shit. Do you think that these are a success? Because this system leaves me questioning, like, where does this even really fit in?
Yeah,
like,
it's tough because like I see the potential behind the soulbind trees.
I think the soulbinds are better than the conduits.
Yeah, the conduits I haven't like the conduits. It's mostly a case of like there's clear choices, and then in some cases there's like an unimpactful thing where it's like very you could just use whatever you want because it doesn't matter because none of them do anything.
People asking me if I had the fucking battle res conduit for food buffs before dungeons is actually just the most dumb shit ever, and I'm like, no, I'm not fucking battle resing you, dude. I don't play that. I play the stamp roar range one. Right. Stop that.
Yeah. It's tough because like I don't know how to. I don't have like a simple suggestion for how to make them more interesting, but I do think that the soulbind trees worked pretty well. I think there's some pretty clear balancing they could do, right? Like, I mean, buff Mika Nikos, buff the Plague Divisor, whatever guy. Like those nerf like Pelagos and Nadia or whatever.
Naya needs a nerf.
Naya as well, yeah, sure.
Naya's fucking disgusting.
But I don't know. I mean, it's tough because, right, like there's some specs that like really like certain soulbinds. So, although nobody likes Plague Divisor or Mika Nikos or whatever, so those are safe to buff. I mean, you're not gonna bust the balancing open by doing it. Yeah, conduits are interesting as well because like I feel like there's sort of the same challenge that Torghast has, where, and we'll get to this in the Torghast critique in a bit. In order to make the system work for 36 different specs and then 144 different spec covenant combos, they end up having to like do so much design, right? They have to design like 400 conduits, 500 conduits, and then each person still only sees like 7, right? And so there's just kind of this huge amount of work they have to do where if they want to make, they have to make 36 different conduits before we all see one new one, or more for the conduit specific ones as well, or the covenant specific ones as well. And so, yeah, I mean, it's tough. It feels like there should be more choice between the conduits, but I don't know. I don't know how they could do that. So
I think they ended up getting a little bit in over their head in terms of like the conduits. I also think that the system feels pretty bad because of shit like conduit energy, and then the upgrades coming from Venari based on Stygia. Both of those things are really, really bad, and it's like, oh, dude, this doesn't suck.
So conduit energy is just like a clear, like, what is this doing here? Delete this thing. Like, and I rant about this often enough that I don't want to go into it again here, but there's no single person on this planet that has had a good interaction as a result of conduit energy. 99% of people have just never had to think about it, and 1% or whatever of the WoW players have had a bad experience from it.
Negative.
So like, just get rid of it, right? It's not doing anything good for anybody. It's only doing bad things. I don't understand what the point is, and there's a huge host of people that come to conduit energy's defense with the argument, this hasn't affected my gameplay, which is like, okay, why do you care then if we got rid of it?
Okay, and then in tandem, I will rant about fucking Venari, dude. As somebody who plays a druid, and I have 4 motherfucking specs. The RNG upgrades on conduits from Venari reputation and Venari like Stygia farming was actually the worst possible thing imaginable. They have made it slightly better by making max level conduits drop from raid bosses. They have made it slightly better by doing that. At the same time, that system is so bad, and I think soulbinds are okay. I actually think that soulbinds add a little bit to gameplay, and there are some specs that have choices, and I think that that's kind of cool. Conduits, I think, are just functionally very bad, and having to unlock them between patches and do all this other shit is just not fun. And like, if you had all of the conduits unlocked at 226 and you removed conduit energy, I don't think it adds anything to gameplay either. Functionally, I think that there are some situations that maybe there's something, right? There may be like this one situation where it adds something to your gameplay, but very infrequently does it add enough to where it feels good. And I think that system by itself is probably one of the worst things that they've added. And we're fortunate enough to where that the system is not impactful enough to where it matters.
So yeah, that's the nice part about it, right? Is that like it's got all these problems, but it's also low impact, right? There's enough breaks in there. It's not like artifact power or whatever, because it's pretty similar to artifact power, where it's just like these tiny little percent upgrades that you're getting.
Can you imagine for 1 second where you have a conduit that is a potency conduit that is 10% of your damage on single target, and then you have a different potency conduit that's 10% of your damage on AoE, and then your covenant conduit is also a mandatory wear, and so your 2 potency slots have to be swapped back and forth over and over again, and you have to like always go back to your fucking covenant hall. Like that doesn't exist right now.
I think it does for some specs.
I think it only existed for Windwalker for a little bit, and I think that's been changed.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's fair. It is true though that like that situation you described, instead of between AoE and single target, that's true between like fire and frost, or whatever, fire and arcane. So and in those cases, I mean, it's another huge wall to trying to play multiple specs effectively on the same character. Especially like we talked about, you know, they're kind of the vision with the soulbinds is you pick a different tree for a different spec, and then there's still a lot of options in it because you can choose all the different paths down the tree. And then you just, you know, the conduit energy system is there to stop you from like, but all it does is it stops you from using the one usable one for your, like you're using Pelagos for your multiple different specs of your same class.
Exactly. It's not a good system. I generally think that the conduits are a really bad system. I think the soulbinds are like, I'm like lukewarm on soulbinds. Like soulbinds, I could take it or leave it, honestly. Conduits have to be reinvented. I don't know.
The thing to me about the conduits is like, they spent this dev time to make so many different conduits. Like, what if all the dev time that was in conduits and soulbinds, right? Because it's not like, sometimes people make this argument about like, oh, why did they make this pretty zone? Like, what if they just took that away and made like tier sets with the same dev time?
Dude, they had to like literally actively think through every single fucking one and like invent all of these. These were actively invented too.
Some of them are novel, but like there's a lot of new stuff here. There's a lot of design, right? They spent so much time making these soulbind trees, but people don't actually like think, oh, do I want you know, the Path of Trials Pelagos ability, or this, you know, the one that reduces my File's Serenity or whatever? Like, which
I'm never changing.
Yeah,
I'm never.
You're never like looking at your soulbind tree and like it's not like it was with the talent trees back in like early WoW, where you'd like pull up your talent calculator and be like, wow, what cool talent builds can I make? And even that ended up being a pretty cookie cutter thing towards the end here. But even like there are basically is nobody who like is excited by a look at the Pelagos tree and is like, what if I travel down this path this way? Because there's those just the soul lines or the conduit slots and different things that just like, oh yeah, I mean, I'm just going down, I'm getting my potency one here, right? Like none of these like interesting effects that they've designed and created are more important than just going down the path that says potency on it.
Well, I think that's like a function of where we stand with like gaming in general. Like not even just WoW, but I think that's a function of metagaming in video games is like a really common thing these days. And like, I think that there's a lot of like RPG elements that are lost as a whole due to the fact that like being the most optimal is the most important thing for a lot of people. And like, there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's just fucking hilarious to hear you describe that situation that happened with talent trees like forever ago. But it's not even happening with classic WoW right now. Like people
That's
are
fair.
stuck in like one talent build and they're not fucking swapping it. They're just sitting there with it.
But so the question is like, are there casual classic WoW players that are still excited by different talent tree options versus
I don't know, maybe.
are there currently any Shadowlands players, casual or otherwise, that are excited by the different like all the different design that went into the Soulbind trees, right? Like, has that paid off, right? Has the work that went in to making Pelagos's tree have all of these different nodes that do all these different things, like, has that been been time put to a good use or not?
Dratinus, what are you talking about? I really love the decision between whether or not I get out of combat movement speed after killing mobs versus whether or not I get bags that pop up in my inventory that may contain some Shadowlands herbs, fish, and ore.
Right. Like that. I mean, that is the interesting question, right? I mean, like there's like a lot of interesting stuff here, right? Like, I don't know, File of Patience is like a cool ability, right? Like if you were just thinking about like maybe slotting this in, File heals you for more, but it's a hot instead. That's the kind
actually
of thing
not
where
a bad one.
You would think about this. This is interesting, but like, oh, the word finesse is above this, right? Like and the other two have the words endurance and potency above them. So even though this is the most interesting one on this row, you basically never click it. And there's a couple of cases like Klaya, right? Klaya has the crit chance one below an endurance, and so you pick that over the potency one.
Yeah,
but like I mean, that's just because there's a huge amount of power in this trait. I feel like Soulbind trees, for instance, like if you change this design such that like you just opened up more paths between these, and you made it so that you could pick either the potency or endurance, and then either the ones on the row, and you did a little bit of a rebalance if needed. I think you would still see a lot more people choosing a lot more different stuff depending on the situation, right? Like if you rebalance these, if you make these two actually do something, and then you make it so, okay, pick a conduit of any kind, and then pick any of these three abilities. I think that would be more, but that would lead to people choosing between more stuff and it being more of an interesting system.
But again, circling back, I don't think that like if the Soulbind system, like the Soulbind system is not in need of a change. I think that the Soulbind system is like pretty meh just as a whole, but it's like not that big of a deal. I think the conduit system needs to change.
Right. So if you look at the Soulbind system, it's a case where it's like, okay, here's all this dev time, it's not doing anything good, but to its credit, it's also not doing anything bad, right?
Yes.
Whereas conduits do need a little bit of help to have that stop being the case for them. Yeah, I mean, for me, that's I think a good summary of our thoughts on these two systems. Let's talk about legendaries. I think legendaries is probably the area where I would describe it as the most unmitigated success of Shadowlands. Is legendary
unmitigated
effects.
How?
Well, okay, like compared to the other systems, it's the one that has like the most upside, the fewest like huge glaring drawbacks to it.
Okay, fair.
So I think that the big criticism people have of legendaries is like the crafting process, the soul ash numbers
and the
required,
Torghast.
the fact that Torghast is so tied into creating them, and people have problems with the Torghast, with Torghast, right? But I think the legendaries themselves, they've done a pretty good job of creating a bunch of pretty interesting powers. They've taken a pretty active balancing approach to them that has also
They made Torghast layers account wide too, to where your alt's able to like jump into layer 8 immediately, which is
definitely nice. Although
it definitely saves you a lot of fucking time.
Yeah, I climbed the tower on 6 characters. But that's always gonna be true, right? It's like I'm always gonna be the person who does the 7 blood of the enemies or the 6 Torghast before they make them account wide.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the thing about the legendaries is like I think they did a really good job of making the powers interesting, making them pretty well balanced, nerfing and buffing things while also making it so you don't really have to recraft that often, right? Like there's not that many specs that are hugely that have these things they crafted 3 months ago that are now useless items that they need a new one, right? Like there's a couple cases where there's like a new BIS by a couple percentage points, and there's a couple cases where they nerfed your one because they bug fixed it or whatever, and you hate getting bug fixed, like Hunters did. And so like those do happen, but for most specs, they landed I think in a pretty good place where there's like you probably have a BIS legendary, but you probably have other ones you're interested in for different situations as well. And yeah, it takes a lot of Torghast to unlock them. But it's not like you have to spend 4 weeks doing your Torghast to switch your legendary into a different power, right? You spend 4 weeks doing your Torghast and you make a new legendary, and then you have both of them. And that is, to me, the fundamental difference between legendaries and the conduit and the covenant system that makes it so much better for me. Could you imagine if you literally you just spent the soul ash and you changed your one legendary into a different legendary power?
It's I think that like a reforging of legendaries, people thought that like they should bring back the scrapper for legendaries and shit like that.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if I feel that important. It does feel like shit if you put the wrong stats on your legendary.
That's true. I on the one hand, like I think it's cool that you add your stats to your legendary. I think that is cool. I do think maybe a little bit of lenience for people that put the wrong ones on, or that your spec changes stats priorities or whatever. Would be fine, but I also don't have too much of a problem with it as is. I do think Torghast. So Torghast is an interesting question. How is that system doing? I think that the events that they've had for Torghast have been
those are good. Those are actually really good.
Have improved the experience quite a bit. I think for a lot of players, those started a bit late. I don't know when they should have done this, but I think they maybe should have had the first Torghast event sooner into the expansion, because I think a lot of people had already crafted like one or two legendaries and were really burned of Torghast, especially because Torghast was so front-loaded for most players into the start of the expansion. Regardless of how casual or not you were, Torghast was something you spent a lot of time in those first couple weeks, and that was also when they weren't running any events. And now if you have your legendary, you have however many N legendaries that you want. You're not necessarily going to be drawn back into Torghast by the events, but I do think if you're going to Torghast anyway, it's really nice when there's an event on. It's a really good feeling. Torghast, though, it's the same problem I referred to when talking about conduits, where they just every anima power they design, they're not just trying to create this wide set of anima powers, and they can just make a new one, and that's a new one that everybody gets to see. They have to make 50 anima powers before each person sees one new one, because they are all so compartmentalized between specs and covenants and stuff.
Yeah, I think that a lot of it too is it's so heavily tied into Torghast, and I think the biggest success of the legendaries, the pattern is obtainable with almost 100% success, right? There's some that you get from fucking dungeons, right? There's
do you remember
darker ones with hunters bitching, but
do you remember that the week 2 everybody's leaving my heroic group after we kill the boss that drops the legendary problem?
That was so
good. That
was
so cooked, man.
That was so good. But I think that more often than not, the pattern's easily achievable. I think the biggest downside with the legendary system is how quickly you can craft them. I think if right now, if you've done Torghast layer 8 every single week, you have 4 legendaries at max. Correct?
I don't know. I haven't done that much Torghast. You got more from your mission table as well.
I think it's 4 legendaries at max, but even then it's I think it's a little bit too
THD
slow.
said he had 5 at 225 and 1 at 235, so that's probably the same as 4 at 235.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit slow, but I think overall, I think the system is pretty good. If they bumped up the time, if they made the time that it takes to actually craft a legendary a little bit quicker, I think that the system would be significantly better.
How I would do it is I would make it so that either once you make your 235, making a 235 a different 235 gets cheaper.
That would be better. Yeah.
Or I'd make it so that you just got Soul Ash from more places. Maybe again, after you clear layer 8 Torghast, or after you create a 235 legendary, you start just getting some Soul Ash from raid bosses. I don't know.
Blizzard's gonna make it to where you can convert Stygia into Soul Ash, man.
Oh yeah, dude. You talk to Venari, and she sells you for 3,000 Stygia, an item that you right click to fuse more of your Stygia into Soul Ash.
No. It's not gonna be like that. It's whatever. It's the Venari sells you an item that after you right click, you get a 30-minute buff. That whenever you're in Torghast and you kill a end layer boss in Torghast, you get 50% more Soul Ash.
Or it's just something that you click to turn your Phantasma into Soul Ash.
Shut the fuck up.
Oh, yeah.
Shut the fuck up, dude. I don't want to be in there any longer.
Yeah, it's weird to me because it does take so long to get those legendaries, but it feels so this is
it's
the
a lot
kind of
better.
This is the kind of grind that I'm so like I'm here for in MMOs, right? Like I'm here for like, okay, how long does it take me to get like 90% of my power, right? 95% of my power. That's like a week. That's 2 weeks of Torghast, right? 2 weeks of Torghast, you get your 190 legendary, bang. That's gonna work for you for like,
Sure.
everything after that is just item level upgrades on an item, which is good and it's a nice upgrade. But like for me, like
It's not huge.
1
power
week,
gains.
get to 90% of your power, and then you have the potential to get to 100%. You work towards that 100%. Whereas with Conduit or with Covenants, it's like, okay, pick a part of the game, you get 100% power there, and you never get to work to 100% in the other parts of the game, right?
I have a question then. Would you even change the legendary system, or do you think it's okay the way it is?
So I think I would increase the accessibility of the legendaries a little bit. I would probably.
I think after the first one, it's just like the first one is fine, right?
I do
Honestly,
think the
I
first
didn't
one's
even
fine.
I didn't even mind grinding the first one because everybody was grinding their first legendary at the same time, right? So it felt okay, just as like as a collective whole. Everybody has the same item level, or the same number of legendaries or whatever else. Now it's like I care significantly less, kind of.
So yeah, if I was in charge of making a change to the legendary system, the change I would make would be, yeah, let's reduce the cost of subsequent legendaries.
But not like, even a ton, but like,
yeah,
maybe like 50%.
I don't know, somewhere between 0 and 50%, maybe more for even more subsequent legendaries, so that you can really start printing them if you keep doing Torghast. But if I was tasked with like changing 5 Shadowlands systems, legendaries would not be one I would get to. I'd be doing a lot of work on a lot of other. I'd be putting my 5 changes in other places rather than in the legendary system.
Okay, I think that probably concludes. I think the legendary system is definitely one of the best systems, though. I think that you and I probably
I think
both
the
agree on that.
crafting of it's interesting. I'm excited to see what they're going to do with it going forward as well, because I think it's a pretty clear place to like add more powers. I don't know, like the idea. People obviously talk about the potential of equipping 2 of them, which is something you could do in Legion.
God, that'd be fucking nuts.
I don't think they'll do that this time, just because from my looking at different specs, there are some specs that have really synergistic 2 legendary combos, and some specs that do not. So,
dude, my spec would be fucking just nuts. I just like, okay. And
so the fact that there's that disparity makes me think it's less likely they will do that, but maybe they'll have some cool way of like fusing legendary powers, so they'll make like,
enhancement shaman will be fucking lit.
Like maybe instead of having 2 legendaries equipped, you can like fuse a minor legendary power onto your existing legendary in a later patch. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's cool stuff that they could do with it. Let's talk about loot, though. Loot is a big system that changed in Shadowlands, and it's really a new era of loot.
Yeah,
we kind of had there's the classic style loot, and then there was this sort of period of like mop style loot, and then I would say there was Legion style loot, with the Titanforging being really prevalent, Titanforging and item upgrades culminating with corruption. And now we've kind of gone a complete reversal back to more of that mop classic style of itemizing, where there aren't upgrades on your items. When an item drops for you that is like, you kill a boss and it drops a certain trinket or a certain weapon or whatever, like that item is BIS for you. It's done, right? You've got it. You found your BIS item. Tertiaries exist, but are a pretty small deal. And I think that has been less well received than I would have expected, given the rhetoric a year ago.
I think,
given how many people were asking for exactly that.
So I do actually think that the system is better than it was. And when I say better than it was, I think it's better than Titanforging and Corruption. I thought that Titanforging and Corruption was a significant injustice to like mythic raiders, basically, or people who did the highest level of content, right? I thought that was like really fucking stupid that people who just did heroic, or like you would see somebody with like some LFR fucking piece of loot that's Titanforge all the way up to cap, and you're like, why does he have that? He shouldn't have that. Why is he allowed to have that? That honestly, kind of made me salty.
How often did you see like Raid Finder Titanforged up to mythic gear though? That's something you saw like.
I wore 2 fully Titanforged fucking relics in my weapon in Legion from world quests, man.
Okay. Fair
that
enough.
Shit was so stupid. Those were 55 item level Titanforges.
Okay, I mean, I believe that is an above average run of luck to hit both of those. But
I think it definitely is. But I sat there and I thought about it. I'm like, damn, that's so dumb that it's even like that. Why is it even like that?
Yeah, to me that was the most offensive part of Titan Forging, was when there was like an item from like a world quest or random low item level source that was bis for you if it Titan Forged, and was just not possible to like deterministically farm.
Yeah.
I think that this system of gear, though, there are, that we do see what the upsides of the Titan Forging and of the random upgrade loot was, which was that like
yes.
it was exciting every time you killed a boss to like right click it and see what dropped. And now like basically every boss in Mythic Castanephria, I'm right clicking it, and there's like nothing's gonna make me feel alive.
But dude, I felt like I was on a hamster wheel for forever, and I think that
Yeah.
I feel a lot less like I'm on a hamster wheel now, and I feel like there's a lot more I can do, whether it be play WoW or not.
Right. So that's the question: is like, is Blizzard actually happy if people are like, oh yeah, the system's great, I don't have to play WoW anymore? See you next patch. Because I think that is a much more common phenomenon. That's something that reminiscent of WoD, right? One of the problems with WoD that from Blizzard's perspective was, yeah, people like they got their items and then they were done, right? And so like Legion and BFA had this theory of like, okay, if we just make it so that every week you might get a Titanforge, right? And you have to just keep doing this content because you might get this Titanforge, that would be a big upgrade for you, right? You're never done. And that's not true of Shadowlands. Like Shadowlands, my character is done for all intents and purposes. That thing, there's a couple of theoretical upgrades you get. There would be a couple interesting item sets I would use, particularly if I could swap Covenants. I would want an entirely new set of gear so I could play Havoc. That'd be cool, but given I can't do that, my character's items are just all set. They're all done. Like there's no...
I think it's cool that it's like that. I do not mind that it's like that. I do wish... Shit. I mean, we're never going to get fully bis, right? Like... Well, even now, can.
Well, with full like tertiary in every slot, that's not happening, right?
Yeah, exactly. But like, you're never gonna get full bis shit, and like
non-tertiary bis though. Like if you ignore tertiary, yeah, it's very feasible to get all your bis items. Like
exactly. And I think that this system is a lot better, and it also allows people to. I felt like immense burnout from the fucking hamster wheel of just loot RNG, feeling like I always had to continue to do Mythic Plus. Feeling like I always had to continue to do like whatever to keep grinding Titanforge loot. I thought that was not great, but
yeah, it's tough to disentangle the like how much of people's angst with Shadowlands loot comes from the fact that it's not got the upgrades anymore versus just like the reduction in the amount of loot that you get from different sources. And I expect it was mostly the latter that caused people to be as whiplashed from BFA, right?
The reduction of loot, I think is the problem. But I think that some people end up attributing it to like Titan Forging and corruption, them wanting it back, and I think that it being removed is generally better for the game.
Yeah,
but that's also I do think that the bring back Titan Forging is a fairly popular opinion.
I think that so one thing that the old system had that was really nice, the way that it worked is the first week that you cleared heroic or whatever, you would get an item in almost every slot, right? Maybe not every slot, but you would get a lot of items. Whereas this time around, like you get like one or two, right? So I feel like the one thing the old system did really well was get you to like acceptable gear pretty quick. Mm-hmm. But this system, they can't really do that, right? Because there's nothing better than acceptable gear, right? Acceptable and bis, it's the same item.
Oh, the same thing. Yeah.
So maybe there's some way of preserving the system being non-Titan Forging, but still having that effect, right? Like,
well, they can increase the pace, but it would be really fucking weird to be bis like after 2 weeks.
Well, what if every item dropped for you, and the item levels were like 10 item levels lower than what they are now, and then like you could combine 3 of the same item to get a 10 item level upgrade on it, right?
That has played way too much fucking TFT.
Okay. You could make a triple, right? And it would go all like
a 2-star item.
Yeah, a 2-star item. But well, consider what this would do, right? They could triple drop rates from doing this as well. And then so week 1 you'd have items in every slot, and then you'd still be working towards like getting all your upgrades across all your different things. And so
I guess
it would speed up the pace that you get to like it would re-achieve that early BFA, early Legion upside of gearing quick near the start of the patch, and also still create like a nice long-term grind towards actually like upgrading your items in those slots.
Dude, I fucking hate that, honest to God.
And then they could just completely get rid of loot trading entirely. You just can't trade loot anymore because that system would create a lot of loot trading angst. Let me tell you, it would create a lot of angst if I'm dropping my second of 3 item level pieces and somebody else is like, I don't have my first yet. And I'm like, I need this because I need this for my upgrade.
I need it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so you
fuck
just
you, I need
delete trading. Make it so you can't trade items anymore. Item trading is just bad. Like, you just get
and
rid
so,
of it, whatever.
On top of that, they're going to add universal void storage, similar to the guild bank, that you can open up your void storage at any given moment because our bags will be full. Perma.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that there's obviously there's...
I think that system seems a bit far fetched. I do think that there is something that could be done.
Yeah, I think that the addressing the like coming up with a way for people to more quickly get okay-ish gear is a serious problem that the existing system had. And right now, the solutions they've found for it have also made it easier to get BIS gear, which I don't think they want to do. I think they want to come up with a way to make getting BIS gear still a long grind while increasing the okay-ish gear thing.
The solution in their mind is just to run more Mythic Plus. I think that that's actually their legitimate solution.
Okay, well...
I mean, you and I understand the faults of that, right?
And also, like Mythic, it drops like 1 item.
I think yes, there's the identified problem right there. But I do think that is they see Mythic Plus as unlimited amounts of loot that you can get, so they're like, okay. Be careful.
Yeah,
it's not about the Valor upgrades. It's about like being able to get the 210 piece or whatever, right? Unlimited amounts of 210 pieces on like 0 weekly reset. I don't know.
So Shadowlands also dropped with the Conquest loot system, which I think was a huge success for PvP gearing.
I think so too.
Almost every complaint I've heard about Conquest has been in the context of why do PvPers get this and I don't.
It's too good. Yeah, exactly.
Which like maybe there's a reasonable concern there, but I feel like making other systems feel as good as Conquest does is the way to approach it rather than nerfing Conquest. You do need a lot of honor to upgrade your items. I've been in this position where I've had enough Conquest and I've not had enough honor before. And that's not a pleasant feeling. I've spent more time in Wintergrasp and in Isle of Conquest than I would have liked to this expansion. Given that the amount of time I would like to spend in Wintergrasp is 0.
Yep, I feel that way. The amount of honor is actually absurd, to be fair. And that one is a bit rough, especially for not even just for PvPers, but like anybody. I think that the honor definitely needs to be toned down a bit.
Yeah, it's weird though, because Valor Points came out as sort of this shadow of Conquest, but in so many ways they're just like a downgrade from Conquest, right? And it's unclear to me why it needs to be worse in all of these fronts, right? Like, it's giving you lower item level gear than Conquest. You need to use Valor to upgrade as well, so the total amount of Valor to get to a 220 item is like huge compared to the total amount of Conquest, right? Because you use the honor to upgrade for Conquest, so it's pretty low. Like, you spend the same amount of Conquest for a 200 versus a 226. That's not true for Valor. And it's got this cap as well. To me, it seems like they should relax at least one of those things for Valor. Like, either just remove the cap, or make it so that the upgrades don't cost Valor and cost some other currency that is more easily accessible, or maybe even no currency, and just you use the Valor points to get the item at the level that you've earned, similar to how Conquest works there, or make it go up to 226. I don't know. I feel like the Valor system, again, it just has all these breaks in there that are just like, we don't want this to be too good. I
do understand why they don't want to be. Well, I mean, I think part of it too is if they let the fucking Valor system go to 226, it's uniformly the best system for gearing too.
Is it though? Like, I mean, how many Valor upgrades can you create with the current cap of 5,750, which is effectively the cap that would be there if the system had been in since the start of the patch as well, right? Like, it's pretty close to what it would be for 750 a week, right? You would have like
750 a week. Yeah.
You have like 1 226, 1.5, maybe 2.
Okay, how many
weeks until you get a new 220 with Valor, right? It's like 5 weeks before you get enough Valor to make a new 220. Okay,
never mind.
Conquest, you get one every week and a half, right?
Redacted statement, maybe, yeah.
Because the Valor is used for the upgrading as well, it's just so Valor expensive, and then the cap is set in such a way that, like, if it was 5,000 per week, you know, if the cap went up by 5,000 per week,
yes,
it would be you'd be getting an item each week. but it goes up by 750 each week, which is not very much. That's like half an upgrade every week, depending on which slot we're talking about.
Yeah, that's yeah. Never mind. You're right. I think the Valor Point system, I think it can be reiterated on a little bit and probably be a little bit better. But I think that they have to be really careful too, though, because I think the Valor Point system is the highest. I think the Valor Point system has the highest chance of getting out of control too, because they do also have the issues of like it's infinitely farmable to 10s, I guess, in context of like what the current loot item level is. It is Mythic Plus is literally infinitely farmable to 10s.
Right,
Obviously.
which that's the thing that PvP doesn't have.
It's
right?
not
PvP doesn't have the infinitely farmable medium item level stuff until midway through the patch. Now they do have that with honor upgrades going all the way up to 200 or whatever, right?
Do you think 200 is medium item level? I don't think 200 is medium item level.
I mean, is that different from 210?
Yes.
Yes, it's different, but like it was a huge problem with PvP in early patch where like a PvPer would have like 4 226s and then like 10 184s on, right? And that's like, you know, what is the system?
I mean, 210 is almost
right. It's almost there.
It's like almost 20 item levels of old system, like like of BFA system. It's like 20 item level different.
I think that addressing that like making infinitely farmable medium item level stuff exist from PvP would be a good change for PvP gearing as well. And like if you shift a little bit of power out of the conquest system and a little bit into end of match items coming back.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's interesting because it really feels like they've tried to make each form of content fill a different niche of your gearing.
There was way too much fucking loot. There was way too much fucking loot in previous expansions in BFA and Legion, just how much shit you had, but like, which I don't know. There's a healthy medium, and it's hard to hit.
I think that it's just inevitably it's created whiplash, right? There was no way to go from an unhealthily high amount of loot to a healthy amount of loot without it feeling bad, right? There's just no.
And I don't even know if this is a healthy amount of loot. It's hard to even say, but this definitely is jarring, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's like if you're drinking 2 milkshakes a day, right? You're drinking 2 milkshakes a day, like that's too many milkshakes. But the day that you don't drink any milkshakes and you're like, all right, I'm stopping. Like that's you're gonna be like, man, I want a milkshake today. This is not speaking from personal experience or anything. Totally is. But yeah, I mean, so you know, moving to those healthy, the healthy system, right? It can be hurtful in the short term, but I do think that there's a lot of good changes here with loot. I'm very encouraged as well by the movement that they've made on both raid and M+ gearing. We didn't talk about raid gearing, but the increase in the amount of items that you're getting from raid has been nice. Adding those potency conduits to raid, that's been nice.
Stop the shit with BOEs and raid.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. BOEs are extremely offensive to me.
That shit's really offensive. Yeah. You gotta. That one's not bad. That one's not good.
I just hate the pay to win component they bring in more than anything as well. The fact that you can whip out $300 of WoW tokens and buy yourself 4 226s in an expansion. Four of them in an expansion where like that's much more than it was last expansion as well, because that's more weeks worth of gear. Because you're getting less gear from other sources. So, cut that out. 1 BOE. I will allow 1. I will allow 1 BOE per tier before I'm mad.
What about 1 and then like a generic, like a neck back ring?
Fine. 2, and I will not publicly complain about it. Actually, you know what? Any reduction from 4 and I'll be happy, but 4 was so stupid.
Bad.
Dude, I've spent probably about 24 hours in Casanathre BOE farms this patch as well, which is like, especially now that I figured
that's why your fucking logs show up as broken.
Maybe, yeah. Well, we figured out how to reset as well, so you don't have to wait the 30 minutes. We figured out how to just reset the raid now too. So
how? I need that. We need that for whenever bosses get fucking bugged, man.
Yeah, well, so we actually haven't done this to exploit BOE farming this tier. Jury's still out as to whether or not we will next tier, but the way it works is, okay, this is my tip of the week. Here it comes. Here's the tip of the week finally. If you want to reset a raid instance, normally you have to wait 30 minutes while nobody's inside the raid for it to soft reset, and that resets all the trash, resets any like bugged bosses or whatever. But you can also, if everybody logs out of their characters and you pass lead to an unsaved character, like an alt or whatever of somebody, everybody logs out and then that person hits reset all instances. and then you log back in. The raid will be soft reset for you.
Okay.
Everybody has to log out though. Everybody who is currently in that who's in that save has to log out when that alt resets the raid.
Does that work if you're already like locked to the instance?
Yeah, yeah. So like 20 people or whatever.
You've already killed
are
bosses.
20. So we've done this recently because we've moved General Draven in a way we didn't mean to. So like we killed Shriekwing, we walked down towards Huntsman Altamore. General Draven came with us, and we're like, crap. We wanted to keep him there so that we could spawn Sludgefist. We forgot to spawn Sludgefist. We forgot to do the skip. So everybody zones out. Everybody logs off, and you pass the lead to somebody's alt.
An unsaved character?
Yeah, an unsaved alt. And then that alt resets, and then you can zone back in, and you don't have to wait the 30 minutes.
That's actually really useful.
And that,
for bugged shit like
it's just the bug. We did that for the Draven bug, yeah. We haven't done that for BOE farming. We've always waited our 30 minutes. We've followed the stop sign there. Although next year, if this isn't fixed, I can't make any promises. But there's I don't know. BOE farming is degenerate, and when it's incentivized to this extent, that is a sign of an underlying broken system, which was the BOEs this patch. So that's done.
It's bad.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the Maw. The Maw. One of it's interesting because to me, every time I see discussion of the Maw, people are like, "This isn't fun," right? And then Blizzard's like, "Well, you see, it was our intention to make this system not fun. It was our intention to create a hostile zone that was not fun." And everybody's like, "Oh, okay, but isn't the game supposed to be fun?" And that's been my experience with the debate surrounding the Maw. Has been I feel like they have succeeded in making a hostile zone that you do not want to go to. I question whether or not
really
that was a
bad.
good goal to have for their video game.
I don't know. It turns out like you don't really have to do it. Right?
You don't.
Like
You go once per week. Almost all their you get so much. The rewards are front loaded into those weeklies.
Yeah, exactly. The Maw is like not great. I thought that the no mounting in the Maw thing was so fucking weird too. And so like you saw people that like once they got the Venari reputation, they got sockets in every single slot. They basically stopped doing the Maw ASAP. I don't know if your guild has any requirements, but we basically said, hey, keep doing the Maw, just do the weeklies though in our guild. Like that those are the requirements for our guild is do the fucking weeklies in the Maw. It's literally like 10 minutes. And then
ours are basically like sockets for progression. Like get that, like do the Maw as much as you can, ideally during progression. Although we didn't require it as much as we should have. But now that we're on farm, our requirements are do whatever you want.
We required I have the Jailer 5 daily during prog, but obviously that it's not always feasible for everybody either. Shit sucks.
Yeah.
Alex G doesn't have sockets unlocked?
Alex G didn't have sockets. Does he still not have sockets? That's wild.
That's what Careshit says.
Yeah, he didn't have sockets during prog because he's a bad boy.
That's nuts that he still doesn't have them. Though.
I mean, once the boss dies, there's less reason to go get them.
I guess that's true.
There's a couple, so I like the idea of being able to buy sockets for your gear and having that kind of like long-term gear upgrade through, purchasing sockets. I think that works really well. I do think that obviously tying it to the Maw, a little bit of a bummer, given that the Maw is not great. But I don't know. I mean, maybe I don't like the Maw just because I front-loaded it so much again as well.
I think that the Venari reputation was a bit of a grind. I hope they don't really bring it back in 9.1.
Yeah, so they've said that they're changing it, right? It's not going to be Stygia. It's not going to be Venari rep. It's going to be something new.
It's going to be his brother, Venuri.
To me, okay, one of the dumbest parts to me is if you want to upgrade your conduits with Venari, you have to schlep back and forth because they're unique. So you just put one in your bag,
that shit sucks.
and you just schlep back and forth. Yeah, it's actually such a pain. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like the Maw. I don't know.
It's not egregious enough to like really complain about, but it's not good.
It's tough because like I don't really like the content's not really aimed at me, right? Like the open world fun. So maybe there are people who are enjoying it, but I do feel like if it was a little bit less annoying, I would maybe think positively about because like I haven't minded grinding stuff in the past. So I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that having open world stuff is important though, but I think that the Maw is is it's not it's not even neutral. It's like actively not fun.
Yeah, you're like, oh dang, I have to go do the maw. Like, ugh.
Yeah.
And then you go do it, and you're like, all right, well,
It's not worse than Warfronts.
no, it's not worse than Warfronts.
Warfronts are the worst.
Um,
Those are the
Anima.
worst.
Let's talk about Anima. I think Anima did a good job of not mattering, and that's nice. It's nice.
I thought, yep.
A lot of people expected that it was going to be AP number 3, and it was not. Anima is just a extreme whatever. Doesn't do anything. Doesn't matter.
So somebody asked me about Anima. What did I type exactly? Let me try to read it verbatim.
Okay.
It was like, fuck. Let me find it. Pros of Anima: low impact. Cons of Anima: hard to get enough for your buildings.
It is true that it is hard to get enough for your buildings, but that's just the challenge for that, because they want you to always want more Anima, right?
Yeah, and then the mission table doesn't matter. None of the buildings matter. None of that should actually have. Well, I guess renown technically does, but
you know, the mission table, like, it does matter to be getting your soul ash. So that's a tiny little benefit. And Anima, your first 1,000 Anima for the weekly does matter, but the Anima itself isn't the thing. It's just completing the quest.
For renown. It's
Yeah.
not the Anima, it's the renown.
Exactly. Well, and it's not even like you're using Anima to get renown. It's like you're completing the quest, right? You're not actually spending your Anima on renown. You're just completing that weekly quest.
Yeah. I like that. I like that Anima's really low impact. I think that they hit like a lot of the casual systems in a really good way, where it's like the buildings don't really matter, the Anima doesn't really matter, all that shit's like its own. It's a fun mini game, and I think that's where it landed. The garden, very very fucking expensive, but
upgrading. So maybe there are a better way. Maybe they could have done more with this and created a better system that was more interesting and more of a fun little mini game. But I'm glad that they didn't try and make it a power level thing. So
yeah, I think they hit a good job, I think, with that.
All right, and then final thing I want to cover just briefly, like world quests. This expansion, I think also. So the world quests themselves have gotten more annoying, but they've become exponentially less important to do. So,
yes.
Again, I think I would class it as a bit of a win, although it does. I don't know. World quests have just gotten more annoying, and a lot of stuff this expansion has gotten more annoying. Like there have been a lot of these steps back that they've taken, in my opinion, from like improvements they've made to various systems in BFA. Right? Consider like, okay, AP in Legion, you dropped your AP item, and then you had to right click on it to add it to your item, right? And like that was a little bit annoying. So in BFA, they just made it go straight into your necklace, right? You never held the item; it just went straight into your necklace. And now in Legion or in Shadowlands, you have to go to your Anima conductor. Right-click on the person. You can't even right-click on the reservoir, which somebody suggested on Reddit recently that you should be able to do, and I agree. You should be able to just right-click on your reservoir, deposit all. But you have to go and talk to this person, then click on the deposit all button, and then click on yes or whatever to deposit. Right? Yep. I guess you don't have to click on yes. So you have to. It's like much harder to apply your Anima than it was to apply either Legion AP or BFA AP, where they made it easier, right? Similarly, like picking up your emissaries, right? Emissaries, you used to just do them and then turn them in. And now they made it so you have to pick them up and then do them and then go back and turn them in. And they don't give any items, right? Instead, they're always just gold emissaries, but you have to actually vendor the grays as well. So they've just added all these like little annoyances to things.
Somebody in chat has a really good point. Why is the Anima broken up into 3 stacks of 35 that doesn't stack with another 35 Anima token?
Yeah.
That was always like fucking mind-boggling when it was like, why is it 3 of 35?
So I think from my position, like all of these have been annoying to me, but also they are not game systems that I care about, and so I don't really I don't like. I think that they're pretty clearly negative changes from how the design philosophy worked in BFA on those areas. Like I liked that BFA tried to make AP and emissaries and world quest less annoying, but also don't care. Not a big deal.
Yeah, I think that's not a big enough deal to actually like change or actively get upset about.
I do think if they want to make world quests matter again in future, though, I think going back towards making them less annoying. Like these world quests where you start them and you're like, oh my god, this is a 10-minute world quest. It's like, why? Why, Blizzard? All right, we have
killing one guy, then you have to go suck Anima, then you have to kill another guy.
Brief clarification to issue here, which this is my fault, was the DH Magic Mitigation article, not by a friend of the podcast, Squishy, but by Itame, different person entirely. I was tricked into believing it was Squishy by Tettles saying Squishy sent it to him, and then I just kind of assumed it was Squishy because this is the kind of Squishy plays tank and stuff, so it all kind of made sense. But credit actually due here to Itame. So yeah,
there we go.
Didn't mistake there. My fault.
I'll be honest, I didn't realize that he wrote it either.
Okay, definitely Tettles' fault then.
I didn't realize he wrote it either until Squishy DM'd me. I was like, oh shit. Oh well, my bad.
All right, let's move on to. So we've got a couple of quick Q&A questions, but first we get to thank our patrons over at Patreon.com. They are Patreon.com/Titanforge. By the way, that's the place to go if you want to skip the line, just get straight to our thing instead of having to scroll down the top 100, top 4,000, top 7,000 Patreon pages or whatever to get to ours.
Are we that far down?
I have no idea, man. It's got to be pretty. I don't know. That's an interesting question and one that I will research. No, I will not research that. I'll check. I will check to see if I can figure it out within 10 seconds, and then if I can't, I will not spend any more than that figuring it out.
Fair enough. Try this.
All right. Our patrons include, but hey, if you are out there and you want to bump us up into the top 100 patrons, any oil barons out there want to set us up with
I just read. I gotta mute.
Paul of US Proudmore, Sports Bra Hot Disney Princess GF of Tichondrius US. Darling, it's better. Down where it's wetter. Take it from me. Let's get down to business to defeat the Huns. Did they send me daughters when I asked for sons? You're the saddest bunch I've ever seen. Dude, maybe I was supposed to sing this, but whatever. 3 full lines of the song. Tettles is allowed 3 full lines of a song to be a nickname as well. That is a new, I think, high.
Are you telling me that I'm not supposed to do that anymore?
No, that's fine. I'll allow it. Nalthor the Rhymebinder is now known as Diet Jaina. Dratnos' Dino Pillow, Chromed, Trekkie, the Marsh Hare, Regulus, Nevernude, Chewy. This is the all-new fans' overdue reward, giving everyone Disney, aka Titanforged. DPS in Castle Nathria is a healer for easy orange parses. True, actually, it's all you just say like, hey, I'm DPSing. I'm not gonna do any healing,
dude.
Very
easy.
I
I think our Holy Paladin may have like all 100s in Nathri because he fucking is he actually beats our DPS sometimes. He's like 9th place.
Dude,
we're power infusioning him.
Holy
power infusion.
Crank. They actually like completely crank. If they just focus on damage, yeah. Especially if they're using like Mad Paragon and everything, it's insane.
Yeah.
Ziv XX. Do you want to build a snowman? Necris, Revdil, Nevuk, Sinmora, Eevee, oh god, please buff Frosty K in PvE. Stevenson, love the Constantinople bit. Light of the Protector and Frenzied Regen off the GCD. No Trick, I scheduled Tettle's Flame. Sire Dematicus. New mystery thriller starring Shift, Trell, Day, and Sean. 4 Night Fae, 1 Nut. Dymat now starting SLG Prison as a nerfed Windwalker. Ooh, dude, that sucks. Old pre-bug fix Windwalker was really fun on that fight. Syncope the Sleep Deprived. When you're the best of friends having so much fun together, you're not even aware you're such a funny pair. You're the best of friends. Prince Ali, Fabulous He, Ali Ababwa. Dude, it's all Disney songs, Tettles. They're doing a Disney bit. Patrons.
I know. I've noticed. Thanks. I had to change all their names. Every single one of them.
Hanny is going to pump in Shadowlands. I see what's happening here. You're face to face with greatness and it's strange. You don't even know how you feel. It's adorable. I don't know what movie that's from. I've known most of the others, but I don't know what that one is.
I don't know what that was from actually either.
Flick. Gallic. Brusif. Chewy. Dranos Ratserpiss. KSE actually feels pretty good. Pagchomp. M Sanity. Canyon and Moonsonara of Emerald Dream Division 7 and Area 52 Scraw. Xena. Rogue is now good enough for Prague, but still bad enough to be sat for SLG. Bless up. That's lucky. You want to be sat for that boss?
Yes, that boss sucks.
Red Color. Some Zero of Tichondrius is in SLG prison. YouTube.com/Workbringer. And Morty died 13 times to Mechanic this week. And a Horror of US Proudmore. Yes.
Fuck.
A lot of our patrons now in SLG prison as well. Feel very sad for you guys. Hope you get out of there soon.
I think that fight should actually be pretty quick now. I don't think it should take you. I think you should be able to be out of that fight in like what, 150 pulls?
It's still a lot of pulls. That's still the most pulls of any boss this tier.
It's not fucking 250 of buggy ass interactions. Let's
move on to our Q&A segment. Our first question comes from Riley, who asks, question for the end, do you think it's fair for Blizzard to have their cake and eat it too by not allowing easy Covenant swapping on live, but profiting off it during the MDI?
I think that profiting off of it is a very staunch assumption that they're like actively like greedy and like taking money from it from the MDI, and like this is an active decision.
It's true though that like, you know, people would complain about it if you couldn't do it on MDI, right? Like if you had to lock in your Covenant class. And would they complain about it though? What would it do? I guess it would just mean like
they would complain about it. Yes.
What would it do if if each person could only have one, like if you could only play one Covenant spec or Covenant class combo, like you could never play multiple. You had to choose. Okay, is my priest Fae or Kyrie in this tournament or whatever? Right.
I mean, that I don't know. I think that's just like I think that's less fun as a whole. I think that what we see right now, where we have to decide, is this Vengeance Demon Hunter going to play some bad shit in this dungeon? Is this Vengeance Demon Hunter going to play Necrolord in a fucking necrotic theater of pain? I think that. So
like, yes, I agree that it's better, but the question is like, why wouldn't that be better on live also? And why
it is better on live also.
Yeah.
I think that the developers see it as a completely different thing though. I think that they see it as like this is the 0.01% of people that we don't and it's also our
like,
game to.
I mean, they give everybody free gear and stuff on TR as well, right? Like TR is just like you can have whatever you want. But I don't know. I do think it is an interesting question there, and I think it belies that it's not a game that is designed to be like it's designed around the competitive side, right? Because things behave so differently on the competitive server, where the competition is what they actually are prioritizing.
So why did they allow it for MDI? I don't know, because it's cool to see. I think it's
because it is clearly better for the competition to be like that. But yeah, I guess the other priorities on the live servers. It's like how it's clearly better for the competition to not have to grind your gear on TR, right? And not have who has better items matter.
Can you imagine if you had to fucking just character copy?
But it is clearly better for the live servers to have gear be an actual thing, right? And not just be something you pick whatever you want, right? So like there's good precedent for why things should be different on TR versus live.
I mean, I know meme think tournament realms are actively bad for World of Warcraft as a whole if they are not used sparingly. You have to be very, very careful about how you're using them.
Right, like people talk about making Race to World First happen on TR.
I think that's very bad.
I think that would be misguided as well.
Yeah.
All right, Vinadrin from Discord asks, I might be alone in this, but I'm getting annihilated on the meters by a boomy who pressed CA Convoke macro. Feels pretty bad. Even one of the more egregious one-button specs, like Kyrie and Ret, has to do a lot of setup and perform like 6 buttons in the right order to do any damage. I know a lot of boomies and ferals who enjoy Convoke, but what's the right answer from Blizzard's point of view? Nerf it because easier specs should be less rewarding in damage, or keep it because some players enjoy it? Asking because I can't play what I want and be competitive in Raid and High M+. So, the question here of like, should easy specs do less damage than hard specs? And also, like, should they nerf Convoke? Are I think two different things, because I think that Convoke is like, it's probably a little high. The amount of damage people are doing with Convoke is probably a little high. That can go down.
I tend to agree. I think that like, in general, I don't think that I used to actually have this opinion where I think that specs that are easier I thought that it should do less damage, and shit like Holy Priest should do less healing and Guardian Druid should be worse mitigation wise. And like Havoc Demon Hunter should be easier to play. But I think all in all, I think that all the shit should be balanced. And like, I don't think anything is actively like that much harder either. I do think that Boomy with CA Convoke is pretty funny because it's 2 fucking buttons. But like,
yeah, I think Boomy is a little bit of an outlier right now in terms of like ease of playing. Like it is,
you can still lose a lot of fucking damage if you're not casting though. Like that, to be perfectly fair, if you're not casting in between your CA Convoke, that is 3 full minutes of not having shit. Like that is a lot of damage.
That's fair, but it is also one of the specs where like whether you're casting Wrath or Sunfire or Starfire or whatever is like, it's not that big a deal except for a couple of spots, right?
I mean, on AoE it's a huge deal, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think that rather
like
than
DM Hunter and stuff like that,
rather than coming around and trying to like be like, hey, we want these harder specs to do more damage, I think it's more like, okay, we want to make sure that every spec has like comparable skill ceilings and skill floors, right?
I think that that's the important part, yeah.
And yeah, I mean, because I think that people talk about difficulty and they're usually talking about like one of those two, because the thing is that the skill ceiling for most specs I think is pretty high. The skill floors where there's disparity more. And I do think the Boomkin is a very high skill floor spec, and it's also a spec that is doing a lot of damage right now. And
It's
when
also
you run into specs like that, that's like Havoc was last expansion. BM Hunter was towards the end of last expansion. It does create a lot of animosity because a lot of people are going to be like, if you're pressing 50% of the right globals as a Boomkin, you're doing pretty good damage. And if you're pressing 50% of the right globals as a Windwalker, or Subtlety Rogue or whatever, you're doing 0 DPS, right?
Yeah, but I also think Moonkin is one of the highest skill ceilings. I think all casters are some of the highest skill ceilings just as a whole. Like Warlocks, Moonkin, shit that has to hard cast abilities, Shadow Priest. If you have to hard cast an ability, your skill ceiling is almost always higher.
Yeah, in like real world fights, I agree with that. Especially in Mythic progression. For like a heroic raid situation where it's just like people parsing, I think that changes a bit in that sort of place as well.
If you're not gonna get punished, if you're not getting punished, then
you're not getting punished for like doing your movement bad. Because that's the thing about the casters in Mythic Raid that people don't really appreciate this, but like casters in Mythic Raid, you need to be optimizing your damage, but also you die if you screw up, right? And if you greed too hard, but also you do 0 damage if you don't greed enough.
We definitely love the I fucking accidentally stood in that. I thought I could get that one cast off and die.
Exactly.
Like, it happens. And you're just like you're regularly be like, yo, why did you die? You're like, I was being dumb.
Yeah,
and like trying to grid cast when I shouldn't have. I know better, right? And so yeah, move on.
Good question though. I do think. I mean, I think that CA Convoke is definitely something that.
I think that probably needs to be looked at a little bit. Yeah.
Maybe there's just a way that you can add some more build up required to it, where like you need to be in the right eclipse or whatever for it, and
you're in both eclipses. That's the CA part.
Okay. Fair enough. Maybe there needs to be some like I mean I don't know. There's some way of increasing the skill around pressing those buttons such that the build up to it matters.
I don't think there's any way of like fixing it that's that great without making it feel actively worse. I think it may get a nerf.
I mean, it'll always feel worse if they make it harder to set up as well. That's true.
Yeah,
I do think it's a likely target for nerfs as well. Anyways,
I agree.
Good questions. Thanks everybody who sent those in. Hope everybody enjoyed our show. We will be back next week with TTV Trelsky, hopefully. And yes, send us in more questions for next week. Got to figure out what our next week topic's going to be, but that's a problem for me in 6.5 days, or for us in 6.5 days, and not for now. Anyways, thanks everybody for watching. Bye, everybody.